Good evening. I'm your news anchor, Kimberly, with the latest news on the presidential election. You may have seen firsthand or heard from others about the presidential debate that was held yesterday. During the debate, Megan was asked by the interviewer whether she was proposing a draft, and she responded with yes. Now I'm passing it on to McKinley, where she'll be interviewing Megan live.
Thank you, Kimberly. Good evening, Megan. Thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I'm going to have a couple of questions to ask you today. The first one being, so you mentioned a draft yesterday, which is very controversial. How do you feel about this comment today?
I believe that there are many patriotic young women, men and women that are willing to go and fight for our country. So I believe that a draft won't be necessary, but if it is, then we will have, because we need to fight this war against Stroganoff.
President Anna Williams said if you drafted soldiers, you would be sending loved ones into war. What's your response to her?
I understand how the people feel about sending their loved ones to war because my grandfather, he was a Vietnam War veteran, and my great-grandfather, he fought in World War II in Germany, and his brother, my great-uncle, he lost his life in Germany during World War II. So I understand how the people feel about losing loved ones and sending their loved ones to fight, but we are so proud of how our family members went and fought for our country and for the freedom that we have today.
This may be a tough question to ask, but do you have anything from your great uncle that reminds you of the accomplishments he made?
Yes, we actually have his Purple Heart that he earned after he died in Germany, and that just means so much to us. And I actually do have a story about that, and if you don't mind me sharing, but whenever he died and my grandfather received his Purple Heart, my grandfather had died of cancer a few months later, and we were very distraught because we lost the Purple Heart, and we looked everywhere for it for months, and we just couldn't find it. And we waited a year, and we were looking, and eventually we just gave up because we just couldn't find it. And a few months after we had given up, my mom had received a phone call from this unknown phone number, and it was the person that had moved into her old childhood home, and they called and said, we found a Purple Heart that said Wade Michael Vernon on it, and that is my great uncle, and we felt like relieved. And every day when I look at it, it just reminds me of the sacrifices that he made for our country, and I know that we can do this as a team.
That is amazing, Megan. Thank you so much for coming on today. Now let's get into some other interviews.